Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the training session. I believe the entire training course adds value to your daily IT management solution. Once again, welcome to Desktop Central Training. And before I proceed into the presentation, I would like to understand if you are able to hear my voice and view my presentation. Please do confirm by commenting on the chat window below. Thank you very much for the confirmation. Let me introduce myself. My name is Santosh and I'm the trainer for today's training, and I'm a product specialist with ManageEngine. I take care of endpoint solutions. Let's quickly look at the training schedule. We are on the week 2 of the training schedule, and we will be looking at the software deployment. In case you have missed the previous week training, which is patch management, you can always view them on the link shown on the bottom of the screen. This is week 2, and we'll be looking at the software deployment in detail. Let's quickly look at the agenda that we have for today's training. We'll be looking at the overview of software deployment. We'll be looking at how we can deploy a Chrome browser, which is a freeware application, to all the network computers. We'll also be looking at deploying Microsoft Office 2016 to a specific department, which is a commercial application. We'll be looking at the deployment. We'll also be looking at how the users can install the softwares by themselves without having the administrator install them. And also we'll be looking at some quick scenarios and solutions. And we'll also be looking at frequently asked questions. In Desktop Central, we support all 3 flavors of operating systems for the software deployment: Windows, Mac, and Linux. We have over 2,500 predefined application templates that you can choose from across the Windows, Mac, and Linux operating systems that you can use to download freeware application and then push it to your endpoints. Let's look at the architecture of Desktop Central. Now, Desktop Central is a client-server model application, which means the agent has to be installed on all the machines in order to manage them. And this is an on-premise solution. Now, the server can be installed in your LAN or on your DMZ. I presume that everyone knows what is a DMZ, where you can securely host the server and the agents can contact the server securely. Now, Desktop Central manages both local area network agents as well as wide area network agents. When you manage the local area network agent, they take the software that you deploy directly from the main server. When you are managing wide area network agents, you can either choose to have a distribution server in your remote offices or the branch offices, or you can have direct connections as well. When you have a distribution server, the agent takes those softwares from the distribution server. Now, what is a distribution server? Imagine you are managing branch office 1 and branch office 2, and you have over 100 machines in your branch office 1. Now, if you have a distribution server installed in one of the machines in the branch office 1, whenever you deploy the software, the agents will contact the distribution server and take the softwares locally. Now, distribution server will take the patch or the software from the main server and gives them to the remote office agents. Now, can I manage roaming users, meaning users who will be on the internet as well as on the LAN? In case if you want to manage them, yes, we can create a remote office just for the remote users or roaming users, and we'll be able to manage them both in LAN as well as on the internet. Since I mentioned this is an agent server model, now let's look at how we can install the agent. Now, Desktop Central supports both workgroup as well as domain setup. In case you have a domain, you can add the domain to the Desktop Central server, and you can browse through the domain, select your machines, and initiate agent installation remotely. you can automate the agent installation as well. Or you can simply download the package and push them to the agent, manually install or use a script. In fact, if you have an Active Directory set up, you can always use a group policy in order to get the agent installed. Now, when you are installing the agent using the console, you should keep in mind that the server installed machine should be able to reach the client machine's admin folder. On the background, we use the admin folder, we place the installation file there, and then proceeds with installation. So prior to remote installation, please make sure that you have connectivity and also the access for the client machine's admin folder. Now, what if I don't want to expose my central server? Then you can use a forwarding server in between your central server and the branch offices as well as the roaming users. Now, what is a forwarding server? Now, forwarding server is a secure gateway server which is placed in between the roaming users and the central server. Any communication between the roaming users and the central server will go through the forwarding server. What if all my agents are roaming agents? In case if you have all roaming US agents, then you can use a AWS or an Azure cloud to place your central server there and then manage them. Now, using an AWS or Azure cloud instance will be an advantage because it's a cost-effective solution as you don't have to install on any hardware. Now, please note the Desktop Central or the Zoho is soon migrating to cloud. You can watch out for the newsletters for the migration. Let's look at the components that are required for the entire setup. You will need a server installation, which is a required component or essential component. You will have to install the agent on all the machines, which is an essential component. You will have a notification server, which will be installed parallelly along with your server installation, which is also an essential component for all on-demand operations. We'll be looking at that when we do the software deployment. We'll talk about that in detail. And of course, you can choose to have distribution server, which is an optional, because you can either have them connect directly to the server or use a distribution server. Forwarding server is again an optional. In case if you want to have a secure communication over the internet, you can choose to have a forwarding server. And failover server, again, is an optional. In case if you want to have a failover server installed, you can have that installed and work with them. And language pack is again optional. Now, when you install a failover server, when the central server fails, the failover takes over and it gives a continuous monitoring. Let's look at the ports used by the Desktop Central. Now, the Desktop Central server uses 8020, which is a HTTP port for communication, and 8383 for a HTTPS type of communication. And the notification server, which is running parallelly along with the central server, uses 8027 on TCP protocol. And the distribution servers, if you look at the bottom, it uses 8021 and 8384 for HTTPS communication. And there are other operations. For specific operation, Desktop Central server uses specific ports. For example, the voice and the video chat uses 8443, which is an UDP. And for remote control, it uses 8444 and 8443. And for the file transfer, it uses 8032 and 8031. Now, there are other ports which are required as well. In case if you want to know those ports and the protocol details of how the Desktop Central server communicates, you can always view them on the link that is shown on the bottom of the screen, which is desktopcentral.com/ports. Please visit there for a detailed understanding about the architecture. Now, 90 minutes refresh policy. What is a 90 minutes refresh policy? Every agent talks to the server once in 90 minutes, meaning even if you have 90 machines or 900 or even 9,000 machines, this 90 minutes will be divided equally among them, and each agent will be given a specific time to contact the server. Now, server has the intelligence to give a specific time to the client to contact the server. Now, this is to avoid network utilization or bandwidth related issues and even the server performance. When you have a bigger environment, this 90 minutes refresh policy will come very handy. Now, why do the enterprise need a software deployment? Now, you as an IT expert have two choices while deploying the software. Either you can install and configure the software manually on all the machines by yourself, but which is a time-consuming and a tedious process. Hence, you require a centralized software deployment solution. The second option you have is either you can have the users to install the applications by themselves, again, which may not replicate an expert install, which will again raise service requests. Hence, to avoid those software deployment related queries, you need a centralized software deployment solution. Let's look at how software deployment works with Desktop Central. Now, with Desktop Central, you can download the application binaries from the vendor, keep it on a repository, and then apply the appropriate switches for the deployment and push it to the end users. When you push the application to the end users, the local area network agents will take the software deployment or the package directly from the repository, which will be on the server, whereas your wide area network agents or your remote office will take those applications from the distribution server. The distribution server, in return, will take it from the repository. Now, we saw there are two types of repository. One is a network share, and another one is a HTTP or HTTPS type of repository. Now, when you're using a network share, the agent contacts the network share directly and installs the application from the share. When you use a HTTP or HTTPS type of repository, the agent downloads the application binaries completely to the client side and then installs the application. Now, network share will be useful when you have all the agents on your local area network. Reason being, the remote office agents may not have access to the network shares. So it's best to go with HTTP type of repository for the wide area network agents. And when you're using a network share, there is no practical limit of the installation file. You can have practically any limit of file size when you are installing the application. However, for a HTTP or HTTPS type of repository, you can create a package up to 5 GB per package. Now, in our support experiences, we have not seen an application which requires more than 5 GB. In case you have a specific application, then you can choose to have a network share. Again, when you're using a network share, you need to have a setup and maintenance process because the ransomware or the virus uses the network share and it controls your network. So you must have appropriate access and you should have maintain the network share periodically. However, on a HTTP type of repository, you may not require such action. Now let's look at a scenario here. Now Peter, being an IT manager, has John and his team, and while they're managing over 1,000 computers, they have different remote offices, they have different departments, which they'll be managing under John and team. Now Peter has specific tasks for John and team for software deployment. Let's look at how John and his team accomplish those tasks. Here, I will consider myself as John, and let's see how I'm able to deploy the softwares that are given to me. Task number 1, deploying Chrome browser to all the network computers. Let's go to the products. Remember, we spoke about the templates. We have over 2,500 templates. So since I'm going to try install a freeware application, let me go to the template. On software deployment, clicking on templates, and I will be searching for Chrome. Now, as you can see, there are a list of templates available, one for Mac, one for Windows, one for Linux. If I click on any one of the package, it gives me the details of that specific template. It has the details of the application name, it has the version, it has the type of installation, it has the platform, and in fact, it has the location from where it is going to download the application, and of course, the install switches. Since we are using an MSI application, it does not require any install switches since it's handled internally. However, if you are choosing an EXE package, it will definitely require an install switches. When you're using a template, we would have provided them already. So if I want this specific application, in our instance, Google Chrome, when I click on create package, what happens in the background is it downloads the application from the vendor website and keeps it on my repository. Now, once the download is complete, I can go to the packages here and I can search for the package that is downloaded. Now, as you can see, the packages that I have downloaded is shown here. Now, all I have to do from here is I have to select the package and go for installation. Now, when I'm going to push the application, I can either push it to a user or a user group, or I can push it to a computer or a group of computers. In our case, John is going to deploy it to all the computers. Let's go for the computer configuration. Now, on the configuration page, which is similar to that of a patch or any other configuration inside the Desktop Central, you can name the configuration here. In our case, we'll be saying Chrome installation. And here, I can choose the package that I want to install, whether it's a MSI or an EXE package. You can choose that, and you have the option to install as well as remove the application. So in case if you want to uninstall, you can go for the remove option. In case if you use the advertise, which will populate on the control panel, you can have the user install it from the control panel directly. So in our case, we are going to choose install completely. Now by default, the software will be installed in using the system account. In case if you are deploying it to a specific user, it will use the target user. In case if you want to run it as a run as user for a specific admin credentials, you can choose run as option here so that you can provide the administrator credentials for the software installation. So even though the end user does not have an admin privilege, if you provide the run as user here, it will install in the privilege that you give over here. And you can add multiple packages as well, not just one package. If you want to install multiple applications, for example, along with the Chrome, if I want to install a 7-zip application, I can click on add more packages. It will install in the order that I have added here. Now you have an option called scheduler settings. Now here you can set the date and time to begin the configuration and an expiration date for the same configuration. For example, when you deploy a software, if you want to begin the deployment of specific time, you can specify it here. The expiration date is useful when you are deploying it to a domain or a group. For example, if you are deploying the software for an entire domain. Now, whenever a new agent is added to the domain, it will go ahead and install the configuration that it has for that domain. Now, if I don't want to install after a specific time, say I set an expiry until this month end, so even if a machine is added to the domain after this month, this configuration will not be deployed to that machine. So you can set an expiration date, which is an optional. Then you choose the deployment policy. When I say deployment policy, this determines how and when you want to deploy this specific configuration. Let's create a deployment policy. Now you can deploy the configuration either on a startup or during the refresh cycle, meaning remember we talked about the 90-minute cycle. Whenever the agent contacts, you can install them, or either of these, whichever happens earlier, so that it will install if the system startup is the first or the 90-minute cycle. Now you can determine which week of the month, which day of the week that you want to install, and the deployment window, the time window between which you want to install. whether you want to install this during the production hours or during the off production hours, you can specify the time window here. And in case of Windows machines, you have this wake on LAN, meaning you can do a wake on LAN before the deployment so that the Windows machines will go for wake on LAN before the deployment. Now, you must understand, we use a magic packets to do a wake on LAN. You will have to enable wake on LAN at BIOS level of the machine in order for this to work. Now, download patches or software during subsequent refresh cycle. If you want the patches to be, or the softwares to be ready before the deployment window, you can check this option. Or if you want to download the software to the agent side only during the deployment window, you can uncheck this. For example, if I have set my deployment window between 3 p.m. and midnight, if I don't select this option, the software binaries will be downloaded after 3 p.m. But in case if I want to download it and keep it ready before 3 p.m., I can go ahead and check this option. So that from 3 p.m., there will be only deployment. The download will be before the 3 p.m. window, and it will be ready at the agent side. Now, by default, all installations are silent. In case if you want to notify the user about the deployment process, or if you want the user to engage with the deployment process, you can even allow the user to skip the deployment. So if you want to have user engagement or notify the user, you can always check this option. If you choose to have a silent installation, then you can uncheck it. Then the reboot policy. Now, you can do a forced reboot of all the machines once the configuration is complete, or you can give the option to the end user where they can postpone the reboot. If they are postponing the reboot for a couple of days, if you want to force reboot after that, you have the option for that as well. Or if you completely choose not to reboot, you can go for do not reboot option. So I can create multiple policies. One, a reboot policy, one for no reboot policy, one for a weekend deployment, one for a weekdays deployment. So I can create multiple policies, and I can choose that from the list here. So whichever is appropriate for my deployment, I will choose that specific policy here. And the target selection. Target selection, you have a lot of customization here, meaning you can choose an entire remote office, or you can choose an entire domain, or even multiple domains. And in fact, you can filter them based on a specific computer, or if you want to use the groups that are already part of your Active Directory, you can use those groups. You can create groups on the server. You can create group of computers, you can create group of users, and you can choose them. Or if you want to create dynamic groups, meaning if you want to group them based on the operating system, if you are willing to group server operating systems alone separately, you can do that. So you have a lot of customization that you can choose here from. And in fact, if you are deploying to a specific domain, and if you want to exclude one group of computers, you can do that as well. You can add multiple targets for the deployment process. Now, this will be same across patch deployment or software deployment and other configuration, just to maintain the familiarity so that it will be easy for the end user to handle the product. Now, retry option. What if my configuration fails? Do I have to retry, or how many times I have to retry this configuration? So you can configure that here. You can say you can try 2 times retry of the configuration, one at the system startup and one during the refresh cycle, meaning it will try to install the application when the system reboots and once when it comes for the next 90-minute cycle. Now, this increases the probability of having the application installed. For example, the user may have disconnected during the deployment process, or if there is any interruption, probably when they come back and reboot the machine, it will go ahead and install the application. So you'll have higher probability of getting the software or the patches installed. And enabling notification. So once you deploy, if you want to know what happens to this configuration, you can give your email address over here so that you'll get a detailed email of how many machines were installed, how many failed, what happened to the configuration, those details will be emailed to you at the end of the deployment. Now you have two interesting options here, deploy and deploy immediately. Now when you click on deploy, the server will not initiate a deployment immediately. Rather, it will wait for the agent to come on its own refresh cycle, meaning anytime when it contacts the server within the 90 minutes time frame, it will hand over this configuration and have the agent processed. That's deploy. But in case I do not want to wait for 90 minutes, if I want to go for an immediate deployment, then I can go for this deploy immediately option. Remember we spoke about the 90 minutes refresh cycle and the notification server. Now notification server, which is running parallelly along with your server, is responsible for immediate deployments. Once you click deploy or deploy immediately, the application will be sent to the end user and the application will be installed. You can view those status on the view configuration here on the left hand side. If you click on view configuration, you will have the list of configurations that you have deployed so far. In case if you want to see the status of whether it got installed or if it got failed or if there is any other problem, you can view those configurations from this window. You can click on the specific configuration and you will be able to view the details of that specific configuration that you deploy. And that's how we install the Chrome application. Now, in case you might wonder, how can I add the application to the list of templates that are already there? What if it's not a part of this list? You can go to the link here. When you click on templates, and on the right hand side, far right, you have this option which says get your application added. When you click on this link, you will get a form where you can fill in the details of the application that you require. Our expert team will check the feasibility and have this added to your template to make your deployment easier. Let's quickly recap what happened to the deployment. We downloaded the Chrome binaries from the vendor website, which is taken care of by the template, and identified the silent switches, which is again taken care of by the template. The package is created and we deployed to the target machines. Now, when you use a template, that's how easy it is in order to deploy the application. The second task given to John and his team is to deploy Microsoft Office 2016 to a specific department in his company. Now, this is the task which is most common, I believe, among all the IT managers of deploying Office 2016. Probably 2016 for now, probably later on, we may deploy different versions. However, the process is similar. Let's look at how we deploy the 2016 software. I go to software deployments. And for 2016, first I will check the template to see if I have any template available for Office 2016. I click on search and I search for 2016. I have a template available. However, I don't find a link to create the package. When I click on the template, I do see an option where it says how to doc. Now this document, when I click on the link, it tells me about how I can deploy the Office 2016 to the end users. Now when you open this document, the details will have how you can download the custom tool from the Microsoft website and how you can put it on your network repository, and then how you can create a package, applying the switches. All these will be in detail when you look at this specific page. Let's see how we can do this. First, I click on this link to download the custom tool from the Microsoft website. Now, either you can use this custom deployment tool from the Microsoft site, or if you have an entire package downloaded, you can use that as well. So if I download and extract this tool, it will be something similar to that of this. It will have the setup.exe as well as the configuration.xml file. These two are the files that will be available when you extract that specific tool. Or in case if you have an entire Office 2016 CD, it will look something similar to this. You will have the entire installation file. Even the same setup.exe will be available, and the configuration.xml will also be available. It will be under the proplus.ww folder. You can see the configuration.xml available over this specific folder. In fact, the document which I showed will talk about those aspects as well. Now, if you're going to use the custom tool, which we have downloaded, this tool will download the application on the agent side when you deploy, and then proceeds with the installation directly from the internet, and then proceeds for the installation. However, if you have package of your own, it will use the setup that is available on the share, and then it will install. Now, where should I place this specific application? Well, let's go to the product. On the software deployment, when I click on software deployment, left-hand side, towards the bottom, I have an option that says software repository. Now, when I click on software repository, I see two options, which is a network share as well as a HTTP repository. Now, this is the standard location where I can keep my application in case I'm going to use a network share. You can change this to a different share as well. If it requires a specific access, you can go ahead and provide those credentials here for the central server to access the share. And this is the HTTP or HTTPS type of repository which the server uses. All the applications that are used to upload will go to this location, and from this location, the agent will download and install. So in my case, if I'm going to use a network share, I will place my application in this specific location. Once I place it, my second step is that I go to packages. As soon as I click on packages, I can click on add package, click on Windows, since we are going to deploy to a Windows machine. And here, I have the option to create my own package, not just the Office, even for the other applications that you are trying to install. You can follow the same procedure, except for the silent switches and the location part. So I can give the application name here. In our case, John's case, he is using Office 2016. And it can be an MSI or EXE. In our case, this is an EXE file, so we use the executable second option. It is a commercial application, so we choose commercial here. This is completely for the reporting purpose. And you have two options, share and this computer. Now, the first option is when you are using the network share to deploy, or if you are going to use a HTTP type of repository, then you can use the second option. In case you are using the network share. Now, if I have configured the software repository correctly, I will be able to browse here, and it will go to my repository where I have saved. And if I have placed my application there, I will be able to view that from the location. Now, when you click on OK, it will add the specific file. Now, since this is an EXE, as I mentioned, you will have to have appropriate silent switches. Now, silent switches are very important. Probably that's one of the areas where you will have to concentrate when you're deploying in EXE. Every vendor has a different silent switch or a different way of silent installation. For example, that we have taken, Microsoft Office 2016 uses a configuration.xml file for the silent installation. Now, we will have to provide configure space, again, the configuration.xml location. It's on the same share, so I can provide the same share details and say, use the config.xml from that specific share. Now, this configure may differ with different versions. In case if you want to find out what version has, whether it's a config or configure, a small tip will be you can go to the application folder, you can open a command prompt, run the setup.exe, and you can go for the / and it will tell you what this specific application uses. As you can see, the setup.exe for this version, if you have an MSP file, you can use an admin. In case we are using a configuration.xml, so we will use /config. If you find /config, use the /config. If you find /configure, you can use /configure when you're installing the application. So in our case, we are going to use /config and the configuration.xml file. So once I give this specific arguments, my package is half ready. Now, in case if I want to use HTTP type of repository. Now, in this case, we may not have to, we don't have to give the share location, but we'll have to upload the files over here. You can zip the entire content. For example, if you're using it from the downloaded version, you can select the content of the file. Don't zip the folder, but select all, and then zip the content of this folder, and you can add it over here. Now, once you add it, you can either do the full installation or use the setup.exe and the config file alone. Once you add the file, as you can see, on the agent side, the agent will be able to unzip the specific file and it will be able to install the application. It has the intelligent, or I should say it has the application to unzip. So since I have uploaded the setup and the configuration file here, I can simply give the argument as setup.exe/config, and I say use the config.xml file. We don't have to give the path here, as it knows where it unzips. So this is how you give the configuration when you're using this computer method. Of course, if you want to use uninstallation commands later on, or if you want to uninstall the application, you can configure the uninstallation strings here. So once I configure the way that I want to have the package deployed, I can configure the pre-deployment and post-deployment activities. When I say pre-deployment activities, if you want to check for a specific software, and if you want to uninstall the software and then proceed with installation, you can use this option. You can search for a specific application and the version that you specify. As you can say, if you want to uninstall and proceed with installation, you can do that. Again, the important aspect is the silent switch. If you want to proceed with uninstallation, you will have to give the appropriate or the correct switches to uninstall the application. If you don't provide a proper switch, the uninstallation will fail. Now, not just the software check, you can check for a registry value, or you can check for a process that is running. In case if you want to kill the process and then proceed with installation, you can do that. Or if you want to check for a disk space and then proceed with installation, you can do that as well. Or if you want to run a script before installation, you can do that. And post-deployment activities, you can run a custom script after the installation. If you want to configure or if you want to modify, you can use a script. After the post-installation, you can run the script. Now, once I configure the pre-deployment and the post-deployment activities, we have additional options, exit code. Now, most of the application will use exit code 0 for successful installation. In case if you have an application where the exit code is different from 0, meaning the application may get installed correctly, but you might get an error saying it did not install properly. Probably it's because of the exit code. So you can change the exit code based on the vendor. We have seen rarely on specific applications like Adobe or some versions where we have seen they have changed the exit code. In those specific rare scenarios, you can change it, or otherwise leave it to 0 so that it will understand once the software is complete, installation is complete, it will know the software is installed. You can choose the architecture type, 32-bit or 64-bit, and you can choose the timeline for installation. For example, some applications might take long time, more than 2 hours for installation. In such cases, you can increase this time limit here. And the package properties, if you want to add any specific details that you would like to revisit later, you can go ahead and add those package properties here. So once you add the package, it will be again available on the list of packages. Similar to that of a Chrome, we can go ahead and search the package that you have created, which will be available here. just like Chrome, and you can select the package. You can go ahead and install it for a user or for a computer configuration, just like how we did for the Chrome browser. In John's case, he has to deploy it for a specific department. How do I do that? Rest of the configuration is similar to what we did for the Google Chrome. However, when it comes to the target selection, since we want to deploy it for a specific group of machines, we will have to first create the group. Now, to create a group, we can go to Admin, click on Custom Groups, which is on the left side. Here, you can group the machines together. You can group the users or you can group the machines. So I can create a group for my finance department and add those machines to that group, whichever that I want to install. And when I click Create Group, the group will be created. Now you can create three types of groups. One is a static, the other one is a static unique, the other one is dynamic. Now when you use static, computers part of one static group can be a part of another static group as well. But when you use a static unique, computers part of one static unique cannot be a part of another static unique group. This is given for different functionalities that you use around the product. So you can go through that whenever you go through the specific modules. And dynamic is based on specific criteria. For example, if I want to group them based on the operating system, server operating system, I can use this to group them based on a specific operating system that I want to group. You can use AND command if you want to have multiple operating system listed. So once I create this group will be available on my target selection. Again, I can select the department or the remote office that I want to, and in that I can go for custom group, and I can see the finance department that we created will be available over there. So if you choose this group, the computers that are part of this specific custom group will get this application. And then we can choose to either deploy or deploy immediately. And that's how we install the Microsoft application, which is Office 2016, to a finance department, and John was able to complete that task. Let's quickly look at how John did that task. He downloaded the custom tool Office 2016 from the Microsoft website, or in your case, you can use the package that are available from the CD, and added it to the software repository, define a software repository, keep it there, and then create a package. When we say create a package, we apply the switches on the configuration file that are required. We use that, and then we deploy it to the computers. Task number 3. John is receiving a lot of help desk requests to install various business applications for different departments. How can we save time fulfilling these requests? Well, for this specific usage, we have an option called a self-service portal. What's a self-service portal? A self-service portal can be launched from an agent tray icon or even from the desktop. We can configure how we want to display that. So when an end user launches a self-service portal, this is how it will look like. Now, the self-service portal has a catalog of softwares, a list of softwares that the end user can choose and install it from. Whichever software they want to install, without sending a request to the help desk, they can choose install option here and have it installed. The advantage is that you will not require an admin privilege. It will try to install on the system account. So it will eradicate the need for an administrator to be there to install it. Let's go to the product and see how we can configure that. You go to software deployments, click on self-service portal. Here, I can create or publish software packages for a specific computer or for a specific user or for even a group of users. So I can, when I publish it to the group, that specific group, for example, if it's a user group, wherever he logs in, he will have that catalog of software from which he can choose and install. In our case, I can select a finance department group, and I will be able to drag and drop simply the applications that I would like to display, or the application that I want to have it on the catalog. I can simply drag and drop. Once I do that, that specific application will be a part of this catalog. So they can simply click on install and it will be installed. In case if you have Service Desk Plus, which is another ManageEngine ticketing tool, you can go for an additional option, which is a request method. You have this option says request approval prior to installation. This will be visible in case you have the Service Desk Plus integrated. Now I can put in the software which requires a technician's approval in this list, and when I publish it to the group, they will be able to request from their application. Instead of install, they will have an option which says request. When they click on request, they can enter the details of why they require the specific software. This will create a request on the Service Desk Plus site where the technician can approve it. Let's quickly look at on the Service Desk Ticketing tool site. As you can see, I have logged in as the technician, and once I request the application installed from the self-service portal, it will be on my list to approve. The technician can choose to approve it or reject it. In case he rejects the application, the software will not be installed. He will have a status called rejected. And if he approves it, it will go ahead and install that specific application. Now I can define a service catalog as well, meaning which technician has to approve this, who is the approver. If in case I want to go through a specific channel of approval, I can do that as well. I can define them on the self-service portal settings here. On the left-hand side, I can say go through this service catalog or the STB service catalog template. The same catalog can be chosen on the admin, on the service catalog, under software. You will have the option to have creating a specific request approval method. So once you assign a technician, it will follow that catalog to get the approval. Once the technician approves, it will have the software installed on all the end user machines. And for the self-service portal, you can either choose it by the agent tray icon, or you can choose it by the desktop shortcut, or even you can have it at the start menu. In fact, if you want to rebrand the self-service portal, as you can see, if you want to rebrand the icon with your company's logo, you can do that as well. If you want to change the name to your company's domain or the name, you can change them on the self-service portal settings here. Let's look at how the self-service portal approved. So once the client computer sends a request from the self-service portal, it goes to the Desktop Central server, and from which it chooses a service catalog and goes to the approval method in the Service Desk Plus. Once the approver approves the request, it comes back to the Desktop Central server and then goes to the client computer and have it installed. So whichever packages that you have created already, you can drag and drop, or you can create a specific package just for self-service portal. You can create different departments, like how we did for the finance department and deployed it. You can create different departments and publish it to those departments and associate the softwares for that specific department in the self-service portal. And once you do that, the user will be able to install the application. While you install the software using the software deployment, I've just given a couple of common error messages that you may find and probably give you a little idea of how you can resolve it. One of the common errors is system cannot find the path specified, meaning the end user or the agent is not able to access the share, or it's not able to access the setup that you have placed. You can verify that simply by trying to open the share, which is the repository from the agent machine. You can try opening the share and check for the errors in case if you have given the right spelling for the repository, or if you have given the appropriate folder details on the package. If I have given, for example, DCSW repository, the same should be there in the package. So you can try to open this from the client machine and see if you're able to access the repository. And the other method will be, you can execute the same command that you applied on a package and see if the command is able to install. Manually try to install it from the command prompt here, because that on the background, we try to do the same process. So whichever that you have created, in our case, for example, I want to take the Office 2016 as an example. So I have configured saying this is my repository and this is my setup.exe. Try to run this command manually from the end user view, see if it installs or if it's able to access. By that, you will know if the agent has appropriate access. And the second is related to the silent switches. Now, you must give the appropriate silent switches, which I think we discussed earlier. You must give the correct switches for each application. You can go through the vendor website. You can get in touch with their support to get the silent switches. Or if you want to find silent switches, you can check them from our templates. So without the proper silent switches, you will not have the software installed. These two will be the predominant issues that you may face. Let's quickly look at some scenarios and solutions. Scenario 1. I want to install an Autodesk design software on few computers. It requires a .NET framework. How can I achieve this? Well, this typically means that you want to install multiple packages. As we discussed, we can go to the software deployment, click on package. You can see the list of packages that are already available. So once you are trying to install a specific application, for the familiarity, I'll go with Chrome. When I'm trying to install this specific application, if I want to add another application which I would like to install, which is a .NET framework, I can click on Add More Package. First install the .NET, and then I choose Google Chrome from the list and click on Add More Package. So now it installs the .NET first and then proceeds with the other application that I choose. So in case you have a requirement to install one specific application first and then proceed with the other one, you can use this multiple package method. Can I install software at user level, such as Dropbox or Skype? Yes, you can do that, as we were discussing about the installation. Not just Dropbox or Skype, there are other applications as well, which should be installed with user configuration, because they choose user profile in order for the installation. So when I install a specific application, I can use the user configuration here to deploy it for the user. So wherever he has logged in, during the 90-minute cycle, it will go ahead and install the application on the user computer. Scenario 3, I have a third-party application that does not support silent installation. How can I install it? Well, the best recommended way is to write a script, and you can use it as a pre-deployment, or you can use the script along with the package to get it installed. And one other way that you can try to install is when you are creating a package and trying to install, you can go to the option here and have them allow the user to interact with the installation. So even though if they don't have a silent switch, the user can interact with the installation, click on next, and complete the installation process. Other than that, the best method is to use a script. I have a set of applications including Microsoft Office and a CRM deployed for my sales team. I want all new sales people to have these applications installed on their computer automatically. How can I do it? Well, remember we were talking about the scheduler option when we spoke about it. I mentioned we can deploy it to a domain. So in case if you are deploying it to a domain, we have an option here on the left-hand side, configuration, and click on configuration settings. Here, if this specific option is checked, whenever a computer or a user is added to an OU or a group, it will automatically apply that specific configuration. So in case if you want to have the deployment automatically taking place for a group, deploy to a group on your Active Directory or to a specific OU. So whenever the machines are joined to that OU, it will install the application. Scenario 5, I tried to deploy a business application to a computer, but it failed. Is there a way to troubleshoot it myself? Yes. Whenever the application is pushed, the first step that you will have here is you can view it on the configuration here. And also, while you are creating a package, if you have chosen the option to enable logging for troubleshooting, if you have selected this option, then it will create a log file if the deployment fails, so that you can look into the specific text file and see why it exactly the configuration failed. The first step is always to view it in the configuration details here. You can click on the configuration. You can go to the execution status, and on the status or on the remarks, you will have the details for the failure. Let's look at some common questions. How can I install an application for Mac which is not listed on the templates? For the Mac, we have introduced to create packages as well. You can add a package to Mac. In fact, you can add it here like a HTTP repository, and it will install the application in case you have additional command lines or script that you would like to call during the installation rather than this common library installation. You can add those installation commands here. You can do an uninstallation as well. If you know the path of the installation, once you provide it here, it will go ahead and remove the application on the back. Self-service portal is not enabled. Do I need an enterprise edition to use self-service portal? How do I know which edition do I use? Self-service portal is available with the enterprise edition of Desktop Central. In case if you would like to know what edition you use, you can click on the license on the top hand right corner. It will tell you what edition that you use. Where can I view the software deployment tasks? You can click on the software deployment. You can click on view configuration. You will have the list of softwares that were deployed. You will be able to browse through the configurations that you deployed so far. Where on the user PC does it copy the software installable? Does it erase it afterwards? On the agent installed folder, it will copy the application in case if you are going with HTTP type of repository. On successful installation, it will clear the application. If it fails, it will keep a copy for a retry. If I want my software package to be replicated to the remote office, what is the best way? Well, in order to deploy it for a remote office, I presume the access to the network share may not be available. So the best method is to create a package with the HTTP type of repository. Choose this option in order to create them. By default, if you download an application from the templates, it will choose HTTP type of repository so that this will be common for a WAN as well as LAN agents. When multiple software are deployed in sequence, if first package fails, does it attempt to continue? How's the notification sent back? If the first application fails, it will stop the process, and when you give the notification email, when you are creating a configuration along with the package, you'll have this option to notify yourself over the email. So you'll get a detailed email of how many machines failed, on which package failed, those details will be emailed to you. Well, with that, we have come to the end of the session, and thank you very much for patiently listening to my training. And please do rate us on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is the best. This will help us for our future trainings. And we do have free seminars that are coming up, endpoint security and GDPR seminar, which is happening. Please do register and be a part of it. And please do spread a word about the training that is happening, the upcoming trainings. You can spread it through the following channels on the social media so that the customers will be benefited. The next training is for asset management. Next week, please do join the training session and you can ask questions to the panel. If you would like to have a personalized demo, please do leave it a comment with us so we can have a personalized demo set up for you. We would definitely like to get in touch with you and show you the complete product to help you understand it better. Thank you very much for joining. You all have a wonderful